Boy, I've been trying not to address this issue because I frankly I don't find these sorts of things interesting. I thought the whole Trayvon Martin thing was pretty dumb for people to get so excited about a local issue. Most of these tend to be, and it always ends up that whatever people said at the beginning, usually turns out to be not quite the truth because nobody has any information. And so that's been my standpoint on this whole Ahmaud Arbery thing over the past couple days or week or whatever as it's been unfolding in the media, and all these people have gone out to to prostrate themselves and say how much they hate racism and oh my gosh, this is just so terrible. And it's like, sure, yeah, okay, people shouldn't die. It's a very brave of you to say that people shouldn't be killed. What a warrior for justice you are. And I expect this to come from people who are on the left and race baiters and stuff like that. Folks especially who make a living off of this sort of thing and try to turn everything into a racial issue to make money. I understand it coming from them. But what really disgusts me is when Conservatism Incorporated, the folks who work at establishments like the Washington Examiner or the National Review or the Daily Wire, feel the need to come out, just to remind all of their left-wing friends in these urban centers that they all congregate in, that hey, remember, unlike those average Republican voters, I'm not a racist. And so they too have to come out and talk about how this guy was lynched, when again we have no information, we had no context, and you have the Matt Walshes of the world who absolutely hate ordinary Americans. Let's be clear about that. Matt Walsh. If you're a listener of his show, he probably wouldn't like you in real life. He's just a nasty person, and he's made that clear. I don't think that he would dispute that. But not just him, the Jonah Goldberg class, all of them. They find a need to accept just every assumption of the left-wing narrative on this. Which again, just like with this whole virus stuff, how is there such a thing as a left-wing or a right-wing narrative? How do you think about this kind of stuff in terms of politics? It's just my brain doesn't work that way. I think of things in terms of, trying to assess reality, not how I can, write a good headline that will get people to click on my article. I guess that's why. These people, they have to write things that folks are going to click on, and so they have to frame everything in a way that's going to appeal to their readers. And so I guess a lot of these folks are jumping on the left's bandwagon here and trying to race bait this to death because it's a way for them to, pat themselves on the back and virtue signal. The only person I've seen who's really been, particularly reasonable about all this is Tim Pool, who has not gotten emotional about it at all, either way. I mean, I guess there's some people getting emotional in defending that whole father-son duo, but for the most part, that's not in the mainstream. The mainstream, everyone is, castigating them and deifying this Ahmaud Arbery kid. Because, again, it's very easy to say people don't deserve to be killed. And that's 99% of the time that's true. And certainly I think it was true in this case, sure. Kid didn't deserve, well, he wasn't a kid, he was 25, but the guy didn't deserve to die. But in doing so, it's not good enough for them to say that. They have to also make the case that this was, the greatest kid who ever lived. He had, such a great life ahead of him that he was just going about his business, just out for a jog. And then these two klansmen came up and ran him down and tried to kill him and succeeded. They hunted him down like a dog and strung him up from a tree. By golly, the old days of the South never went away. See, America's just as racist as it's ever been. So putting all of that, that fairy tale aside, that people are trying to whip up, what actually seemed to have happened in this case? Well, we're seeing now today, we're getting footage not only from the day that this kid died, of him going in a house that's under construction. It's got the walls up, it's got the structures, but I believe there are no windows or doors, and the interior of the house is completely open. There's some interior framing, but for the most part, it's an empty shell. And so it's they show him just kind of poking his head around there and walking around the inside, and then he comes out. Apparently, when he comes out the front door, which that doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do if you're sneaking around somebody's house. He sees someone who I believe might have been the owner of the house, or at least a neighbor, who sees him coming up, and he calls the cops and says, "Hey, somebody's walking around trespassing on this construction site." And the kid takes off when he makes eye contact, And this guy runs down the street and he gets, tells his neighbor, this father-son duo, the MacArthurs or something, or McMartins. I don't know, let's call them the McLovins. And he tells them, hey, this burglar kid just ran down the street. Let's go get him and catch him. And so they jump in their truck and grab their guns and head off. And that's the backstory to the scene you saw, to where they catch up to him and they try and jump out at him, and he runs over and sees I think it was the dad with the gun, with the long gun, and he runs over, tries to grab it, and then the son shoots him. And so these are facts, okay? Because these were put out by the police. The police, these were not doctored videos. These are not videos that of someone at the site that may or may not be this guy. His family has confirmed that he is the one on this video. Oh, and by the way, today there are even more videos of him visiting the site on multiple occasions, and at night even. And so if this guy had cameras in the house, well, then he must have known, hey, there's somebody who's coming in and walking around the inside of my under construction home. And so that's probably why he wanted to run after him when he saw him, and he ran away, and why he got his two buddies to chase after him with it, because it seems like this was an ongoing problem. Now, from what we've heard, he didn't steal anything, and you can't see in the videos that he's carrying anything. All we know is that he was trespassing. And if somebody's trespassing on your property and they run off your property, you're not really allowed to, as far as castle doctrine goes, you're not defending your property if they leave. That's the classic thing. You always, if you shoot them in the chest, you're good, because that means they're coming at you. But if you shoot them in the back, that means they're running away. And you were not defending yourself by shooting. But of course, this is complicated by the fact that they didn't just chase him down and shoot him. They chased him down and then got into a scuffle and then shot him. And that's the gray area here. This is the nuance that nobody wants to try and appreciate. Everyone just wants to jump in and say, oh, America's so racist. And this story right here is a great example, even though this story doesn't affect ordinary people, has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with you, unless you live in this area and know these people. It shows how useless Conservatism Incorporated is, that they can't even, try and use a modicum of reason in this case, and that, these are supposed to be the folks who stand up for the Constitution and the right to due process and stuff like that, and these folks just, they absolutely want to crucify these guys. So the question here is that, once they catch up to this guy, because it's not unreasonable to want to talk to somebody who is just, trespassing on the property and see if he grabbed anything or whatever. That part's not necessarily unreasonable. Obviously, the thing that people have a big problem with is that they shot him. Well, what were the circumstances of that? Well, once they caught up to him, he went and started, fighting the dad with the gun. And so at that point, the son can kind of make the case that he was defending his dad. But that only works if, depending on how the law works in Georgia, if it was not considered an act of aggression for them to run up on him, with guns. Because if you've already got your weapon drawn, that is, that itself is aggressing on him. So if somebody, if you pull a gun on somebody and they punch you in the mouth, that's, that's not offense on their part. They're defending themselves because, you threaten them. And so really, whether or not this should be counted as a crime in principle, is kind of left up to the judgment of a judge. This is what judges are for cases like this where there's a gray area. You can make the case that, maybe if you stole a baby, for example, if he went in this house and he grabbed a baby and ran off, this would have been cut and dry, very clearly, justified that that he was shot, that they chased him down, and then he attacked them, they shoot him. That would, totally justified because they were trying to protect a baby. But in this case, what were they doing? What was the goal here? Well, if the goal is just to catch a guy who set foot on on private property and then got right off, it's going to be very hard to convince a judge that this was a good use of force, especially since he was running away and that he was not a threat to either of these individuals, at least, not until they ran up on him and then he charged them and tried to grab the gun. Now, if this happened where I live, I'm pretty sure that, you would be, these two gentlemen would be would be held responsible for his death because they did not have to charge after him, and that really would have been the deciding factor, at least as far as I understand the law and stand your ground, in Florida. These guys obviously were not standing their ground. Now, people have said that, well, you're allowed to make a citizen's arrest in Georgia, that is legal. And if that were the case, then that could, potentially justify this, because that's, what they, you would tell the judge that's what you were trying to do. We were trying to chase this guy down who, was trespassing and arrest him and then hand him over to the police. And then he, attacked us and we had to use force, which, that's the same thing that a cop would do. If a cop, is trying to, see you commit a crime and then he chases after you and then, you run at the cop and he shoots you, you can't at that point say, oh, well, I was murdered. No, you were resisting arrest. Well, from what I understand, the citizen's arrest law is not that broad from what I've seen in Georgia. But again, I don't know, because this is a gray enough area to where, you kind of need a judge to look at it. And so unlike all these people on Twitter who have a very, very well defined and concrete opinion on this, I can't give any more than that. And so until we have, substantially more information, that's all I'm going to say on this issue, okay? I'm not going to go on for this for 24 hours a day for however many months this lasts, like, the cable channels will. So if you gained anything of value out of this video and my lack of BS, please do like this video and consider subscribing, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.